society with one another, judging some to be better or worse, more or less true to the facts, and more or less ethical. Clearly, such insights could help us to improve the quality of human life, and this is where academic debate ends and choices affecting the lives of millions of people begin. I am not suggesting that we are guaranteed to resolve every moral controversy through science. Differences of opinion will remain, but opinions will be increasingly constrained by facts, and it is important to realize that our inability to answer a question says nothing about whether the question itself has an answer. Exactly how many people were bitten by mosquitoes in the last 60 seconds? How many of these people will contract malaria? How many will die as a result? Given the technical challenges involved, no team of scientists could possibly respond to such questions, and yet we know that they admit of simple numerical answers. Does our inability to gather the relevant data oblige us to respect all opinions equally? Of course not. In the same way, the fact that we may not be able to resolve specific moral dilemmas does not suggest that all competing responses to them are equally valid. In my experience, mistaking no answers in practice for no answers in principle is a great source of moral confusion. There are, for instance, 21 U.S. states that still allow corporal punishment in their schools. These are places where it is actually legal for a teacher to beat a child with a wooden board hard enough to raise large bruises and even to break the skin. Hundreds of thousands of children are subjected to this violence each year, almost exclusively in the South. Needless to say, the rationale for this behavior is explicitly religious, for the Creator of the universe himself has told us not to spare the rod lest we spoil the child. This is in Proverbs 13, 20, and 23. However, if we are actually concerned about human well-being and would treat children in such a way as to promote it, we might wonder whether it is generally wise to subject little boys and girls to pain, terror, and public humiliation as a means of encouraging their cognitive and emotional development. Is there any doubt that this question has an answer? Is there any doubt that it matters that we get it right? In fact, all the research indicates that corporal punishment is a disastrous practice, leading to more violence and social pathology, and perversely, to greater support for corporal punishment. As an aside, I should say that I am not talking about rapping a child's knuckles with a ruler. If you read this literature, you discover that children are being hit with 6-foot-long planks of wood and often being paddled bloody. But the deeper point is that there simply must be answers to questions of this kind, whether we know them or not. And these are not areas where we can afford to simply respect the, quote, traditions of others and agree to disagree. Why will science increasingly decide such questions? Because the discrepant answers that people give to them, along with the consequences that follow in terms of human relationships, states of mind, acts of violence, entanglements with the law, etc., translate into differences in our brains, in the brains of others, and in the world at large. I hope to show that when talking about values, we are actually talking about an interdependent world of facts. There are facts to be understood about how thoughts and intentions arise in the human brain. There are facts to be learned about how these mental states translate into behavior. There are further facts to be known about how these behaviors influence the world and the experience of other conscious beings. We will see that facts of this sort exhaust what we can reasonably mean by terms like good and evil. They will also increasingly fall within the purview of science and run far deeper than a person's religious affiliation. Just as there is no such thing as Christian physics or Muslim algebra, we will see that there is no such thing as Christian or Muslim morality. Indeed, I will argue that morality should be considered an undeveloped branch of science. Since the publication of my first book, The End of Faith, I have had a privileged view of the, quote, culture wars in both the United States between secular liberals and Christian conservatives, and in Europe between largely irreligious societies and their growing Muslim populations. Having received tens of thousands of letters and emails from people at every point on the continuum between faith and doubt, I can say with some confidence that a shared belief in the limitations of reason lies at the bottom of these cultural divides. Both sides believe that reason is powerless to answer the most important questions in human life. And how a person perceives the gulf between facts and values seems to influence his views on almost every issue of social importance, from the fighting of wars to the education of children. This rupture in our thinking has different consequences at each end of the political spectrum. Religious conservatives tend to believe that there are right answers to questions of meaning and morality, but only because the God of Abraham deems it so. They concede that ordinary facts can be discovered through